The solo lane, where the toughest heroes in Arrg battle it out 1v1 and try to become victorious by maintaining control of their minion waves as well as forcing the enemy hero to back. In this guide, I will go over basic ideas and fundamentals of the solo lane while also giving examples of things to avoid and ideas that you can follow to help improve your gameplay. First off, let's go over the heroes. First off, let's go over the recommended heroes. We have Aurora, Countess, Crunch, Feng Mao, Greystone, Iggy and Scorch, Kalari, Quang, Richter, Severog, Shimby, Steel, Wukong, and lastly Zinx. Now, one thing about the solo lane is you're not limited to these recommended picks. Pretty much every hero in Arrg can play the solo lane. With a few exceptions, supports are not quite as well in the solo lane, and ADCs, if they're in solo, unless you're a terribly good ADC, you might struggle a bit. Now, there are two sides to the map, the Dawn and the Dusk side. The Dawn side is the white, pretty side, and the Dusk side is that menacing black side. But the solo lane is always located on the side of the map that is closest to the Prime Pit. The Dawn side does have an advantage when it comes to the solo lane. Not only do they have access to the Aqua Buff, but the main part of your jungle is closer to the solo lane. This also allows easier access for ganks, things like that. And lastly, when your jungler does rotate, the river is much closer to the Dusk side of the tower, so if the enemy solo laner is pushed up a little bit, you can actually sandwich them with your presence and your combined with your jungler's presence, and this actually is a huge benefit. Minion waves spawn in at 30 seconds, which is shared between all lanes, but in the solo lane it does take them about 10 seconds longer to run to the middle to start that initial clash, and they end up fighting at about 55 seconds. Now, one thing in the solo lane that is absolutely key is you don't want to just start off pushing the lane. Now, I am in this match right now, and we don't have a solo laner in this lane yet. So, I'm just going to slow farm. Sure, we could push this lane, but we definitely want to wait for lanes to stack up. That way, I am not pushed unsafe. I am on that Dusk side, and you can see the entrance to the river is just behind me. So if I were to push all the way to their tower, this is going to put me in a lot more danger. Even though I am Kalari and I do have some escape, it is always better to play safe than to play reckless, because at these early stages of the game, you're not going to do much damage to the tower anyways. Regardless of what side you spawn in on, Dusk or Dawn, it's always best to use that same practice. Don't hard push the lane just so you can kind of get an idea of what the enemy team's going to do. And if you are on the Dawn side, it's okay if they push the lane because it will put them in danger. And if you're on the Dusk side, you don't want to push the lane because it will put you in danger. These are just small little things that don't seem important, but can actually make a huge difference. Now, when you are in the solo lane, it's best to avoid taking as much poke as possible. I am going up against a Zinx who is a ranged hero, and, she puts down these puddles of goo that also hurt quite a bit. So you want to avoid that type of damage, but if you do take tons of damage, guys, it's perfectly okay to back. You can see I'm staying in on this fight. I've got very, very little health, and it is a very dangerous situation for me. One more hit and I could go down. Remember, guys, it's always okay to back. You don't need to stay in dangerous situations. You can see poking my head out of my tower just a little bit got me a little more poke, and I'm going to be forced out of lane or actually end up dying if I don't do something different. A lot of people like staying into these fights and end up dying and taking more damage on their tower than they normally would. Guys, back. It's not that big of a deal to take a little tower damage. You can see we're 3 minutes into the match and we've got about a fifth of our tower down, and that is okay, guys. but since I did back, I was able to throw on another card. This gives me an advantage over the enemy team. Not only that, she has spent all of her mana pushing this lane. I'm able to take her out, pick up that Aqua Buff, and I'm going to be able to push my lane with a clear advantage over her now. Even though my tower has more damage on it than her, I have a kill, which gives me a huge advantage. Now, since I did pick up Aqua Buff, let's talk about it for a second. It spawns in favored on the Dawn side and provides 225 health regen, or 15 health regen over 15 seconds. So it's not going to instantly give you health, it's just a slow little health drip, but this can give you a huge advantage in the early stages of the game. Going back to the clip, after we kill Zinx, it's time to push this lane, so we can hard push our lane and get these minions into the tower. This is going to allow us to put damage onto the tower and really kind of make up for the damage that Zinx was able to do to my tower. Now, as soon as she shows up, get out, guys. Do not stay under this tower at these early stages of the game and just try to push the tower down. It's not going to work, and she will get substantial damage on you. You also have to be aware of the jungler rotating to you. So, keep an eye on that fog wall at the river, as well as keep an eye on the enemy minion or the enemy hero running down the lane. It's not always safe to stay under tower, and as soon as you see any enemy show up, get out, guys. It is hugely important to get out. Next up, we have solo lane tower dives. Now, in the early stages of the game, tower diving solo is not the best idea. You need to wait until you get a little bit stronger. And this is a great example of why you shouldn't do this. The Zinx is out of mana, so we're slowly chipping her down, but we're diving the tower for this, guys. Guys, this is a terrible idea. You can see, even if that ult would have killed her, we would have died there. And dying for a kill in this solo lane is going to flip the advantage to the enemy team. And this is never a good idea. We could have just pushed her out of lane, forced her to back because she was low on mana, and got a significant amount of damage onto the tower. But instead, we decided to dive her, and we ended up dying for it. That gave her a kill, and you can see they're already pushed up to my tower, and they're starting to do damage to my tower. Now, here's an example on the Dusk side. You can see the enemy team has pushed the solo lane to our tower, and we're just slow farming, guys. We're not really pushing the lane all that much. We can even let this minion wave come into the tower and use the tower to assist in helping kill minions. We are not particularly worried about the minion wave being close to our tower. This is also going to allow our jungler to rotate over. If you look at the minimap, you can see Chimera is on his way over to this river. And even though there is a large minion wave, that's quite alright. Once Chimera gets in range of Quang, we're going to go ahead and engage in this fight. And sure enough, we're going to be able to take out Quang and then go adjust our lane, get it set in the right direction, and this will free us up to either back to go spin card points or actually get some damage done to the tower. Now, depending on how much farm the enemy hero has, when you kill them and they go back to base, they might come back stronger than you are because they might have been able to put on a card. And this is absolutely huge, guys. So be aware of that. And if they were able to put on a much stronger card, maybe a sustain or power card, that's huge and you need to be aware of it. Next, let's talk about Minion Advantages. Now, their Chimera shows up, but I've got an absolute huge minion wave with me, and I've got another one on the way. And so I'm going to go ahead and fight these heroes, but I'm not leaving my minion wave, and you can see my minions are doing tons of damage to the heroes. If you hit an enemy hero with a basic attack, the minions will focus you, and this works in the opposite as well. The enemy minions will focus me if I hit the enemy hero, or if the enemy hero hits me, my minions will focus them. And that's exactly what just happened to that Chimera. He fought me in the middle of my minion wave, so not only am I doing substantial damage, but my minions are all there to help kill him. So guys, if you pick a fight, make sure you're not in the middle of a huge enemy minion wave. Minions do a lot more damage than, it seems, and if you've got 10 of them hitting you, it's a lot of damage. Next up, we need to talk about enemy towers. Now, once you down an enemy tower, it's always best to turn and run away, because most likely the enemies are going to head over to adjust the counter push and everything like that. You can see that Quang showed up, and even though we might be able to take Quang, me, and Chimera together, there's really no sense in pushing that because we are in enemy territory, and it would be very simple to turn that around and end up getting ganked ourselves. So it's always best to turn around and run, but you can't just abandon your lane and start rotating everywhere else. You definitely need to keep an eye on your lane, especially if you have a T1 still up. But this does free you up to rotate a little bit. You can see here, I'm actually going to head to mid lane. Our Bellica ended up going down right there. And so, she needs some help in mid lane dealing with this minion wave. Sure enough, we're going to keep these minions off of the tower. And we were able to do this in the time it took Quang to push to my tower. I'm just going to simply head back to my tower and deal with that minion wave. Now, you might get a little bit of tower damage when you start rotating, but that's quite alright, guys. T1s are designed to fall. Do not sacrifice yourself or sacrifice the health of your team or other towers to defend your T1. Your T1 is perfectly okay to fall. It's much more important to keep your T1 in mid than it is to keep your solo lane T1. Next, let's talk about rotations. Now, when you want to start rotating, it's a huge importance to set lanes. And this is done by taking out ranged minions. You can see here, we're going to go ahead and take out this ranged minion and not touch the other minions, guys. If you touch the other minions, that lane will still be set, but it will be set kind of fast. And you want it to set slow. That way that minion wave gets absolutely massive and it's able to push all the way down. Now for this next minute, I want y'all to keep an eye on that minion wave in the solo lane. You can see it slowly stacking up. We're able to head to mid lane. We end up helping deal with this Countess. Our Bellica was in a little bit of trouble, but we're able to kill her. And our minion wave is continuing to stack up, guys. You can see it's about to start heading into the T2. And the enemy team is going to have to go deal with that wave. But I'm still able to rotate. I'm here in mid, and we're actually able to take down this mid tower, this mid T1, which is huge, guys. And all along, that wave is continuing to stack up. Now, we end up getting that kill on Chimera, but that's really not the point of this. You can see that minion wave is absolutely massive, guys. That's like 3 minion waves all stacked together going in on that T2, and this is going to allow us to not only rotate and stay rotated, but we're actually going to secure Fang. So just from setting that lane, we got a kill on Countess, a kill on Chimera, a mid lane tower, and a Fang kill. And that forced the entire enemy team, you can see there was 2 of them over there. They had to go over there to deal with that huge wave, and our wave is still pushed up very far. So we're not only going to be able to secure Fang, but we're going to be able to put some points in and then head back to that lane and stop all damage on the tier 1. So again, from killing a single minion, we got 2 hero kills, a Fangtooth kill, and a T1 in mid. And still we're able to rotate back to our lane and prevent all damage. Guys, setting lanes is huge, and I think that's probably one of the bigger issues with players. A lot of people like to push lanes. Try setting these lanes, guys. It's one thing to push if you need to keep pressure up, But if you want the freedom to be able to rotate, you have to set the lane. Now, just to show off the importance of rotation from your solo lane, I'm going to show another clip of just a good rotation and what it can do for you. Now, we go ahead and down our tier 1 in this solo lane, and from here, I'm going to rotate to mid. I'm very healthy. There's no reason for me to back. We go ahead and head to this mid lane, and we're actually able to take out this mid lane from this rotation. You know, our Gideon doesn't even come to help us in this mid lane. We're able to take this out no problem at all and remain very healthy. Not only that, we're going to rotate back to our solo lane since Gideon is heading over there, and we're going to go in onto this enemy who's, you know, trying to counter push, you know, the minion wave that I just took from her. Lastly, let's talk about team comp. Now, when you're picking your offlane hero, there are a handful of things to pay attention to. The first being, does your team have a tank or even 2 tanks? Or let's say your team has a Fae support and a Chimera jungle. Picking Kallari might not be the best choice because you really don't have just an entire lot of peel, things like that, and your team could really benefit from having a tankier type hero. There are also other things to consider as well, like Belica is a very good counter to someone like Zinx, so if the enemy team has a Belica, you might not want to go Zinx just because she is such a hard counter. You also must consider what type of hero do you want. Do you want lane pushers like Greystone and Wukong, who are great at providing tons and tons of pressure for your team, but don't offer quite as much in a team fight? Or would you rather have a hero that's amazing in a team fight, someone like Quang or Aurora? These are questions that, you know, you kind of want to answer, and the answer to that question might change when you see your team's team comp. So, keeping these things in mind is absolutely huge, guys, and can really help improve your overall gameplay. Now, going over counter picks and things like that is probably better left to another video so we can really get into it, but knowing what type of heroes are going to play in the solo lane and everything like that is absolutely huge, guys. And with the exception of, you know, the true supports and most of the ADCs, pretty much everybody else can play the solo lane. You know, even Revenant, who's, you know, typically an ADC, he finds success in the solo lane. So, knowing that, you should really adjust what you're going to pick for that solo lane pick, especially if you are going with the first pick and no one's really locked in yet. You know, if you're the first pick and you go with someone like Kallari, the rest of your team should adjust their picks to, you know, make up for not having a Kallari. But if your team goes with a very squishy jungler and, like I said, a very squishy support, you know, picking Kallari might be a devastation to your team instead of a help. So, you know, those are just a few things to think about when you are picking your heroes and in that draft menu. Now, in the late stages of the game, when you've really got out of the laning phase and you're really kind of, you know, that mid-late game area, you should really change from getting into single fights and solo fights to more of, you know, working as a team, things like that. You can see here, you know, I went on that Zinx because I'm at just such an advantage right now. We're able to take her out, but I'm not going to stick in and deal with Morgish. Morgish might be able to take me, and, you know, our mid lane is being pushed, so I'm going to rotate and help out that lane. My team was able to secure Fang since I was keeping that pressure up, and this is really what late game is, guys. You need to work as a team. If your team needs you to be there to fight, get there to fight. If your team is wanting to secure Fang, if you're not going to rotate, keep pressure up so the enemy team, if they do rotate over to take Fang, you're there to take down a tower. You know, these type of choices are absolutely huge, and as a team, you have to work together to make sure that happens. Now, if you chose to be a fighter build, which, you're a damage dealer, make sure you get into those fights and start dealing the damage. If you chose to be a tank, make sure you're engaging in those fights and really tanking the enemy. And if you chose to be a lane pusher, make sure you're keeping that pressure up. And exactly like right here, my Steel, he gets caught out, but he's our tank. I'm going to go head into this fight and we're just going to delete people. And even our Wraith showed up. You could see our Steel was about to be severely punished, but making those rotations really saved our Steel's life, and it's going to allow us to push lanes. This is absolutely huge, guys. Knowing the decision that you want to make and going forward in fulfilling that decision is a huge part of playing the solo lane. You can see I pushed that lane, I just hard pushed that lane. That's going to keep that pressure up, allow me to rotate elsewhere and put some pressure in another lane. We've currently got Fang, so, there's nothing else to do but keep pressure up in all the lanes so maybe we can get a T2. The mid to late game, or really once you get out of the laning phase, you are no longer just bound to the solo lane, unless you're really that solid lane pushing hero like Greystone. You should be rotating, helping out your team, taking down towers, things like that. I do go into a bug right here, but we've got massive pressure everywhere. You can see our duo lane has got pressure, our solo lane has pressure, and this is going to allow us to really take these towers. And my team not only needs me to keep this pressure up, but they're expecting me to keep this pressure up so they can make progress elsewhere. Of course, if I were to die for it, it would be for no reason at all. But by keeping this pressure up, this is allowing my team to do things elsewhere. And as a solo laner, this is key. Know what your role is and make sure you're fulfilling that role the best you can. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this solo lane guide. I really hope this video helped, guys. I took a lot longer to make this than I would have liked. Not in time, but since the last time I made a guide like this. Just because Paragon has just been constantly changing lately. And, I was waiting around for 44 or 42, and then, 43 came out, 44 came out, now 44.3 came out, and so we've had so many changes over the past few months that it's just been almost pointless to make a guide because, the game is completely changing every few weeks. I really hope this video lasts a little longer. I don't think we're going to go back to a 2v1 lane, but who knows, it might happen. So if it does, I will plan on making a guide over those, but like I said, I really don't think it will happen. I think the 2v2 and the 1v1 is here to stay. Well, again, guys, thanks for watching. If you did enjoy, show me some love. Leave me a comment. Think about subscribing. Join our Discord if you haven't done it. I'd love to play with some of y'all. If y'all have any questions or comments, please let me know. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video.